You think you are looking at Norway, Switzerland, Iceland, and the South Pacific. You are not. This is one country, New Zealand. Aotearoa, two long islands stretched across the lower Pacific, narrow enough that the sea is never truly far away, yet large enough to hold volcanoes, glaciers, rainforests, golden beaches, high alpine deserts, drowned valleys, dark sky islands, and cities built beneath mountains that are still rising. From north to south, the land runs for roughly 1,500 kilometers. More than 700 smaller islands lie beyond its main shores. Nowhere on the principal islands is much more than 130 kilometers from the sea. The ocean is not the country's edge. It is in the weather, in the language, in the work, in the stories, in the salt that gathers on windows far inland. And beneath all of it, the ground is moving. New Zealand sits across the restless boundary of the Pacific and Australian tectonic plates. On the North Island, one plate sinks beneath another, feeding volcanoes and fields of boiling earth. On the South Island, the plates grind past each other along the Alpine Fault, lifting a chain of mountains that rain, rivers, ice, and gravity immediately begin to tear down. Over millions of years, the Southern Alps have been raised again and again, while erosion has carried their broken stone back toward the sea. The mountains rise, the weather cuts, the rivers carry the evidence away. But the most surprising thing about New Zealand is not that one country can resemble so many others. It is that the land here is not understood only as scenery. A river possesses legal rights. A mountain is recognized as a living being. Another mountain stands within the genealogy of a people, not as a metaphor placed over the landscape, but as an ancestor. One Maori word can mean both land and placenta. A child's first bond with place may be returned physically to the ground from which the family understands itself to come. How can a river hold rights? How can a mountain be treated not as property, but as kin? Keep that question. We will carry it from the northern edge of the map, through boiling valleys and volcanic plateaus, across a strait into glaciers, fjords, rain, and one of the quietest forests in the Pacific. The answer is not waiting inside a courtroom. It is standing under snow, nearly 4,000 meters above the sea. Begin where the road runs out. At Te Rerenga Wairua, often called Cape Ringa, the land narrows into a headland of grass, dark rock, and wind. The lighthouse is small against the sky. Below it, waves fold over one another in bands of blue, gray, and white. The air tastes of salt. The grass does not sway so much as lie down, pressed flat by weather arriving from open water. To many Maori, this is among the most sacred places in Aotearoa. Te Rerenga Wairua means the leaping place of spirits. In traditional belief, the Wairua of the dead travel north and leave the land from here, passing by the roots of an ancient pohutukawa before beginning the journey toward Hawaii, the homeland carried in ancestral memory. It is a story of departure, but not disappearance. The geology gives the headland another language. Waves attack the cliffs from several directions. Currents meet offshore. Sediment, wind, and changing light can make the water appear divided into different colors, though the sea does not draw the neat border that postcards sometimes promise. Nature is rarely that obedient. What the eye sees is movement layered upon movement. Visitors arrive expecting a viewpoint. Tikanga asks them to behave as though they have entered something closer to a threshold. Official guidance asks people not to eat at the Cape, a small rule with a larger meaning. This is not a picnic ground at the edge of a highway. It is a place associated with the dead, with departure, and with respect for journeys that cannot be photographed. A family reaches the path in silence. One person lowers a phone, another tightens a jacket against the wind. No one has instructed them to become quiet. The place does that on its own. At the end of the headland, the old pohutukawa clings to rock above the water. Its roots seem exposed to everything. Wind, salt, sun, centuries of story. There are easier places for a tree to live. It remains anyway. This is Te Rerenga Wairua, where the map ends, but the journey does not. If this is where spirits are said to leave the country, then the next place is where modern New Zealand begins to argue with itself about what kind of country it will become. Southeast of the Cape, the Bay of Islands opens in long reaches of sheltered water. At Waitangi, lawns slope toward the sea. A flagstaff rises above the grounds. A carved meeting house faces the open space. Nearby, one of the great ceremonial waka rests close to the water, its dark timber carrying the weight of work, protocol, and collective memory. On February 6, 1840, more than 40 Maori rangatira signed Te Rerenga Waitangi here. Copies then traveled across the country, gathering roughly 540 signatures. The event is often described as the founding moment of modern New Zealand. That is true, but incomplete. There were two texts. The English version and the Te Reo Maori version did not say precisely the same thing, especially around authority, governance, and the continuing power of rangatira. For some British representatives, the agreement appeared to transfer sovereignty. For many Maori signatories, the wording carried a different promise, a new structure of government without surrendering the full authority embedded in their own political world. The difference was not a footnote, it became history. Land was alienated, agreements were disputed, communities petitioned, resisted, negotiated, and carried the text forward long after the day itself had passed. Waitangi is not important because everyone agreed there. It is important because the disagreement never stopped mattering. The ground still holds ceremony. A powiri does not begin with casual entry. It establishes who is arriving, who is receiving them, what intentions are carried across the space, and how distance may be transformed into relationship. A call moves through the air. Speakers stand, songs answer. Guests do not simply walk in and take a seat. They are brought into a structure older than the buildings around them. On a damp morning, the grass shines beneath low light. A grounds worker wipes rain from the edge of a carved panel. Tour groups gather, then hesitate, sensing that this is not just another historical site. The wood has been touched by thousands of hands, yet the debate inside the place remains sharp. New Zealand's national story does not begin with one clean sentence. It begins with two languages, two understandings, and a promise that has had to be revisited generation after generation. This is Waitangi, where a country begins with two texts and one unfinished conversation. To understand why language, land, and ceremony remain alive rather than sealed behind glass, go south to a village where the ground releases steam through gardens, pathways, and doorways. A guide walks ahead through Whakarewarewa, her outline appearing and disappearing inside white vapor. She knows where the path is solid. She knows which pools can change temperature, which openings demand distance, and which story belongs to which place. Her family has guided visitors here across generations. The work is public, but the knowledge is inherited. The village lies within Rotorua's geothermal landscape, where Maori communities have lived with the heat of the earth for centuries. Steam curls above rooftops, water bubbles in mineral-stained basins. The smell of sulfur settles into clothing and hair. Beneath the surface, water descends through fractured rock, meets heat rising from a volcanic system, and returns under pressure. The ground does not merely look alive, it behaves that way. Science can trace the circulation of water, the transfer of heat, the chemistry of minerals, and the volcanic forces beneath the Taupo volcanic zone. Local knowledge places each feature within another map, one built from ancestry, practice, danger, memory, and repeated observation. A vent is not only a vent if a grandmother warned children away from it. A pool is not only a pool if its behavior has shaped daily routines for longer than written records can follow. The guide pauses near a place where the earth seems to breathe. She shifts from a family story to a geological explanation without treating either as decoration. One tells visitors what is happening. The other tells them how people have lived with it. That distinction matters. Whakarewarewa is sometimes approached as though it were a cultural display surrounded by unusual geology. It is the reverse. This is a living community whose customs, language, work, and movement have adapted to an unstable landscape. Children grow up learning where not to step. Houses stand near steam. The environment is useful, dangerous, familiar, and sacred at once. Te Reo Maori is not confined to a performance schedule here. It passes between relatives, it names places. It carries warnings and jokes that lose their shape when translated. The village does not preserve culture by pretending time has stopped. It preserves culture by continuing. A gate closes somewhere beyond the vapor. Water spits against stone. A bird calls from a tree that seems too green for the heat around it. Then the guide moves on, and the visitors follow her feet. This is Whakarewarewa, a village built not beside the Earth's fire, but within it. The steam is only the first sign. Farther south, the fire rises into mountains large enough to create their own weather and old enough to stand inside the identity of entire communities. Tongariro National Park is a place of dark lava, pale ash, alpine wind, and sudden color. On clear mornings, the volcanic cones appear clean and distant. An hour later, cloud can erase them. Rain becomes sleet. A warm valley becomes a cold ridge. People who begin a crossing under sunlight may finish it with numb hands and ice forming along their clothing. This is not poor planning by the mountains. This is the climate of elevation in a maritime country. Tongariro, Ngaruho, and Ruapehu belong to an active volcanic zone shaped by the subduction of the Pacific Plate beneath the Australian Plate. Magma rises, pressure builds, eruptions, lava flows, ash, and hydrothermal activity create a landscape that looks permanent from a distance and provisional up close. Yet the scientific story is only one part of why the place matters. For Maori communities connected to these mountains, they are not simply dramatic landforms. They carry ancestral and spiritual significance. That relationship became central to the way Tongariro was recognized internationally. In 1993, it became the first property inscribed under revised World Heritage criteria that formally acknowledged cultural landscapes, recognizing that the meaning of a place may rest not only in its physical form, but in the living relationship between people and land. A hiker reaches a ridge and stops. Below, mineral lakes hold colors that appear almost artificial against black rock. The wind scrapes loose grit across the track. No trees soften the scale. Every object is either stone, cloud, water, or the small equipment a person has carried to survive a few hours here. The mountain is watched by instruments. Its activity is measured. Access changes when risk rises. Modern hazard science does not weaken the mountain's cultural meaning. It adds another form of attention. And this is the first time our question returns. If a mountain is understood as an ancestor, what follows from that belief? Respect in language, restrictions in behavior, a change in who gets to decide its future. We are not ready for the full answer yet. This is Tongariro, where geology becomes genealogy. The next clue does not stand above the clouds. It moves below them, gathering rain, carrying stories, and cutting a path from the central high country toward the Tasman Sea. The Whanganui River travels through steep green country, past settlements, cliffs, tributaries, and long reaches where the forest seems to lean over the water. A waka enters the current. The paddles dip together. Their movement is quiet enough that the river keeps its own sound. In 2017, New Zealand law recognized Tatupua, the Whanganui River, as a legal person with rights, powers, duties, and liabilities. To an outsider, the phrase can sound symbolic. It is not. The law creates a framework in which the river is represented as a whole, rather than reduced to separate pieces of property, water allocation, riverbed, and resource. But the law did not invent the idea. For Whanganui iwi, the river and the people are inseparable. The well-known expression, often translated as, "I am the river and the river is me," is not a claim of ownership. It points toward wakapapa, identity, and mutual obligation. The people do not stand outside the river and decide whether to value it. Their history, settlements, journeys, losses, and responsibilities move with it. A paddler near the front of the waka reads the water without speaking. A branch turns slowly near the bank. A darker line marks the faster current. The sky changes on the surface before the wind reaches the boat. This knowledge is practical, but it is also relational. You learn the river because your safety depends on it. You continue to learn because belonging creates duties. Legal personhood offers the state a language for something the existing language of ownership struggled to hold. It does not make the river human. It requires humans to stop pretending that only human interests can stand at the center of law. That is a beginning, not a solution. Representation still requires decisions. Restoration requires money, time, cooperation, and patience. Pollution does not disappear because legislation uses a new noun. The hard work begins after recognition. The waka rounds a bend and vanishes behind forest. The current closes over the place where the paddles entered. This is Te Awa Tupua, not a river that belongs to people, but a river to which people belong. Then the law looks upward. Taranaki Maunga rises from the western North Island with a form so symmetrical that distance makes it appear almost unreal. Green fields spread around its lower slopes. Forest circles the mountain. Cloud gathers near the summit and can hide the entire upper cone within minutes, leaving the plain beneath a white emptiness. Taranaki is a stratovolcano built through repeated eruptions. Layers of lava and fragmental material accumulate around the vent. Erosion cuts valleys into the cone. The mountain's near-perfect outline is not evidence of stillness. It is the visible balance between construction and destruction. Maori traditions also describe Taranaki through relationships among mountains, journeys, conflict, and belonging. These stories are not early attempts at geology. They carry social memory and locate the Maunga within a network of kinship. In 2025, legislation recognized Te Kahui Tupua, including Taranaki Maunga and related ancestral peaks, as a living and indivisible whole with legal personhood. The state did not grant life to the mountain. It altered its own framework in order to acknowledge a status that Maori communities had never abandoned. That difference is everything. A ranger walks along a track where rain darkens the volcanic soil. The summit is invisible. Visitors continue upward anyway, entering weather that the car park cannot predict. Signs explain safety. Tikanga explains conduct. One speaks to risk. The other speaks to relationship. Around the mountain, the circular forest boundary is visible from far away, a dark green ring set against pasture. It looks almost geometric, but the line is the result of law, land use, and generations of competing decisions about what may be cleared and what must remain. Inside the forest, roots grip young volcanic soil. Outside it, fences divide farms, one mountain, several systems of belonging. At a small track shelter, wet gloves hang from a nail beside a handwritten weather note. The summit has still not appeared. No one complains. In this part of the country, seeing the mountain is never a right. It is an encounter granted by cloud. If you already knew a mountain could hold legal personhood, tell me below. Most people do not. We have now seen the question become law twice. A river, a mountain. Yet law still gives us only the outer structure. It tells us that a relationship is being recognized. It does not fully explain the relationship itself. For that, we must cross Cook Strait and enter the South Island, where volcanic black gives way to granite, gold sand, and colder light. This is Taranaki Maunga, a peak the law is only beginning to understand. Abel Tasman National Park begins softly. The sea enters small coves. Granite headlands catch warm light. Sand turns gold beneath shallow water clear enough to reveal moving shadows on the bottom. After the force of volcanoes and legal transformation, the coast feels almost gentle, almost. This is the smallest national park in New Zealand, covering a compact strip of bays, forest, estuaries, and rocky points. Its visual language feels more tropical than alpine, though it lies within the temperate South Island. Sun, rock, sediment, and sheltered water create the illusion. People have lived along this coast for centuries. Maori communities used its marine resources, travel routes, and sheltered landing places long before European charts attached new names to the bays. The human history is not announced by monumental ruins. It sits in place names, archaeological traces, movement corridors, and the logic of where people could safely come ashore. At low tide, the coast reveals its second map. Mudflats widen, channels shine like dark threads. Footprints cross surfaces that will be underwater again before evening. A family waiting near the edge watches a marker post rather than a clock. The tide is the clock. It decides when a crossing becomes possible and when a beach becomes a wall of water against rock. A kayaker waits beyond an estuary while the tide changes. On a map, the distance ahead is short. In practice, water decides the route. Sandbars appear. Channels narrow. A crossing possible at 1 hour becomes deep water at another. The coast asks for timing. A paddle blade touches the side of the kayak. Water runs from its edge in a row of separate drops. Somewhere in the trees, insects rise and fade. No ash cloud, no courtroom, no summit hidden in snow. Just a person waiting for the sea to make the next decision. This pause matters because New Zealand is not only a sequence of extremes. Its smaller places reveal the same pattern at a quieter scale. Human movement shaped by water, weather, and inherited knowledge. The land is not conquered by speed. It is crossed by attention. This is Abel Tasman, where the South Island begins in gold. the calm does not last. Farther east, mountains approach the coastline until there is almost no room left between snow and deep ocean. At Kaikoura, the seaward Kaikoura Range rises behind the town with a suddenness that compresses the entire scene. Snow holds on high ridges while waves break against dark stone below. Offshore, a column of breath appears, hangs briefly above the water, and disappears before the eye fully understands what it has seen. The most important part of Kaikoura is hidden. Beneath the surface, the Kaikoura Canyon cuts into the continental margin. Deep water, complex currents, and the movement of nutrients help support a remarkably productive marine environment. Surveys have found exceptionally high biomass in parts of the canyon compared with many similar deep-sea settings. That abundance feeds upward through the ecosystem, supporting fish, seabirds, seals, and whales. The canyon cannot be seen from the shore, yet it controls much of what the shore becomes. Cold water rises. Nutrients enter light. Small organisms multiply, larger animals follow. The whole visible drama begins in a darkness beyond the reach of ordinary cameras. Kaikoura's greatest landscape is a landscape without sky. The scale is vertical, snow above, town at sea level, canyon dropping into darkness offshore. A boat captain studies the horizon. He does not search for an entire whale. He looks for a brief angle of water, a cluster of birds, a distant blow, anything that interrupts the surface. The job is built from small signs in a very large space. Beside him, an observer keeps one hand on the cabin roof as the boat lifts. A pencil mark goes onto a chart. Time, direction, weather, behavior. Wonder is recorded in practical handwriting. Local Maori histories connect this coast with ancestral journeys, settlement, and survival. The sea is not an empty zone beside the land. It is a route, a source of knowledge, and part of the identity of the people who have lived along it. Science reveals the unseen canyon. Experience reveals the surface clues. Neither works well without patient observation. The boat slows. Engines drop to a lower note. Everyone turns toward the same patch of water, though nothing is there yet. Then the sea lifts, opens, and a dark back passes through the light before sinking again. One breath, one curve, gone. This is Kaikoura, where the mountains end and the deep ocean begins. Southwest from here, the Alps rise higher, ice gathers thicker, and one mountain forces us to return to the question we have carried since the beginning. Aoraki stands above a world of rock, snow-cold glacier, cloud, and distance. At 3,724 meters, it is the highest mountain in New Zealand. Around it, 19 peaks rise beyond 3,000 meters inside Aoraki Mount Cook National Park. From the valley floor, the scale is difficult to hold. The mountain seems close because the air is clear, then impossibly far when a person begins to walk toward it. The physical story is violent and slow. Along the boundary between tectonic plates, the crust is compressed, broken, and lifted. The southern Alps rise. Frost enters fractures. Avalanches move stone, glace pull debris down valley. Rain attacks the western slopes. Rivers carry powdered mountain toward the sea. The range is being created and dismantled at the same time. Aoraki is not finished. For Ngai Tahu, Aoraki is not defined first by height. He stands within Wakapapa. In traditional accounts, Aoraki and his brothers become the great peaks of the South Island after their canoe overturns and turns to land. The story places the mountains within family, origin, and identity. It does not ask the landscape to serve as a symbol for human emotion. It tells people where they stand in relation to it. Now the open loop can close, a river can hold rights, and a mountain can be recognized as a living legal entity because ownership is not the only possible relationship between people and place. In a Maori worldview, identity can move through land and water. Authority carries obligation. Kinship demands care. The question is not simply, what can this place provide? It is also, what do we owe to the place that makes us who we are? The word whenua brings this close to the body. It can mean land. It can also mean placenta. In a long-held custom, the placenta of a newborn may be returned to the family's Turangawewe, the place where they have standing and belonging. The bond with land is not left in poetry. It is made physical. Birth enters soil. Genealogy enters geography. This is why the legal recognition of rivers and mountains matters. The law is attempting, imperfectly, to translate a relationship older than the state itself. There is a word for this kind of belonging. Translation gets close. It does not arrive. High above the valley, cloud tiers open around the summit. The light lasts only seconds. A walker stops in the cold and looks up. No speech, no gesture, just breath turning white. This is Aoraki, not scenery above a people, but an ancestor among them. From the country's highest summit, the land falls sharply west, through ice and rainforest, toward a coast where weather rearranges plans before breakfast. Westland Tai Putini is a narrow world pressed between the southern Alps and the Tasman Sea. Rainforest grows in the same region where glaciers descend from high snowfields. Ferns drip beside rivers carrying pale sediment. Ice appears beyond wet leaves. The combination feels contradictory only until the weather explains it. Moist air arrives from the Tasman Sea and is forced upward by the Alps. As it rises, it cools and releases rain in enormous quantities. Some places on the western side receive several meters in a year. Higher up, snow accumulates and feeds glaciers. Elevation compresses different climates into a short horizontal distance. Walk a few kilometers, enter another world. The glaciers that reach toward lower valleys are remnants of much larger ice systems. They advance and retreat as snowfall, temperature, and ice dynamics change. In recent decades, many have lost volume and length. Their surfaces darken where rock falls from surrounding slopes. Rivers shift, access routes change. A viewpoint remembered from one decade may no longer show the same relationship between forest and ice. Beneath the landscape, the alpine fault runs like a concealed seam. The same tectonic system that raises the mountains also creates the possibility of major earthquakes. Beauty and hazard occupy the same frame because they come from the same processes. A track worker steps into rain before most visitors have left their rooms. Overnight water has cut a new channel across the path. He lifts a warning sign, carries it farther downhill, and checks a bridge where branches have collected against the supports. The labor is repetitive. So is the weather. Neither is small. By afternoon, the same river may be lower, but the path is not restored by optimism. Gravel must be moved. Drainage cleared. New edges tested under a boot. In a landscape changing at the pace of storms and ice, maintenance is a form of reading. The ground writes first. People answer here. Rain decides whether helicopters fly, whether rivers can be crossed, whether trails remain open, whether a cloud ceiling reveals the ice or hides it for days. Locals do not wait for perfect conditions. They learn which conditions can be worked with. A jacket hangs inside a doorway, dripping onto a rubber mat. Outside, water runs from every leaf. This is Tai Putini, where ice, rainforest, and fault line occupy the same narrow world. If Westland shows mountains falling toward the sea, Fiordland shows the sea entering the mountains and filling the wounds left by ice. Piopiotahi, known widely as Milford Sound, is not a sound at all. It is a fjord, carved by glaciers that once filled the valley and then drowned by the sea as the ice retreated. Repeated glaciations cut deep U-shaped valleys, basins, lakes, and 14 major fjords into some of the hardest terrain in New Zealand. Inland, Lake Hauroko reaches about 462 meters deep, the deepest lake in the country. Another basin where ice removed far more rock than the modern surface reveals. The scale here is vertical and immediate. Rock walls rise directly from dark water. Forest clings to slopes that appear too steep to hold soil. After heavy rain, temporary waterfalls form by the hundreds, falling from ledges, splitting in wind, and disappearing into mist before reaching the surface. Rain does not spoil Fiordland. Rain completes it. Maori traditions describe the shaping of this coast through acts of creation and carving. One story gives the work to a supernatural carver whose tool cuts the great inlets. Geology gives the tool another form, moving ice thick enough to grind valleys below present sea level, carrying rock, deepening channels, and leaving cliffs behind when the climate shifts. Myth sees the hand of a carver. Science sees pressure, stone, and time. Both recognize that this landscape has been cut. A boat moves toward the head of the fjord. Cloud lowers until the upper walls vanish. Water darkens beneath the hull. The captain shuts down the engine. Water taps against metal. A loose rope knocks once against a rail. Somewhere inside the mist, a waterfall continues falling. Nothing else asks to be heard. The silence is not empty. It is built from distance, rain, forest, and the temporary absence of machinery. Then a gust arrives. Spray lifts from the water. The rope moves again. The engine returns and the boat seems suddenly small, almost apologetic, inside the valley. Fiordland is often described through its remoteness, but remoteness is not a mood, it is work. Tracks require repair. Invasive species require control. Weather closes routes. Aircraft wait. Boats turn back. Conservation teams move equipment through country that resists easy access. The land appears untouched because people spend years touching it carefully. This is Piopotahi, a landscape carved so deeply that even sound seems unable to escape. There is one island left. Farther south, across Foveaux Strait, the journey ends not with a summit but with wet forest, a conservation trap, and a bird moving through daylight. Rakiura, Stewart Island, is New Zealand's third main island, though much of it feels like a country apart. Forest covers most of the land. Bays cut into the coast, roads are few. Beyond the settlements, tracks enter mud roots, fern, and bird call. The island's name is often connected with glowing skies, and on clear nights the aurora australis can move above the southern horizon. Yet the darkness itself may be the more powerful experience. Artificial light falls away, stars multiply. The Milky Way becomes structure rather than decoration. Before night, the forest holds another surprise. Southern takoeka, the local kiwi, may forage during daylight. A shape moves between roots. A long beak probes leaf litter. The bird does not perform for the observer. It works slowly across the ground, searching, listening, testing the soil. Wildness here is not self-maintaining. On nearby Ulva Island and across conservation areas, workers monitor traps, inspect tracks, respond to signs of invasive predators, and repeat the same routes through rain. A conservation worker kneels beside a box trap. Mud marks both knees. He checks the mechanism, replaces a marker, and writes the date. The action takes less than a minute. The result may matter for years. New Zealand's unusual wildlife evolved in long isolation. Many native birds developed without mammalian predators. That history created vulnerability. Protection now requires constant attention, detection, removal, fencing, tracking, public cooperation, and the willingness to begin again after a single incursion. On one tree beside the track, an old tag carries a handwritten name blurred by weather. No explanation. The worker passes it without looking up. Rain begins lightly. Drops strike broad leaves, then gather into heavier sounds. Somewhere ahead, the kiwi moves out of sight. The forest does not become quiet when the bird disappears. It becomes larger. Rakiura offers no final monument. No single view resolves the journey. It leaves us with footsteps in mud, wet feathers, a darkening sky, and the knowledge that survival here depends on work most visitors will never see. This is Rakiura, where New Zealand grows quiet enough to hear its oldest heartbeat. We began by mistaking New Zealand for several countries at once. Norway in the fjords, Iceland in the volcanic ground, Switzerland in the high valleys, a South Pacific island in the gold coves of Abel Tasman. But comparison only takes us to the surface. New Zealand is not extraordinary because it resembles other places. It is extraordinary because the forces that create those places are compressed here into one narrow, restless nation. Plate boundary, ocean weather, volcanic heat, alpine uplift, glacial erosion, rainfall measured in meters, forest returning almost to the ice. Nothing is truly separate. The mountains create the rain destroys the mountains, rivers carry the mountains toward the sea. Forest takes hold in the sediment. People build roads, settlements, laws, rituals, and responsibilities inside that motion. And the Māori relationship with land is not a decorative layer placed over geography. It is a system of identity, memory, authority, duty, and kinship. Wakapapa connects people not only to other people, but to mountains, rivers, coastlines, and the living world. Titiriti shapes the political conversation. Te Reo Māori carries place in the sounds of names. Te Awa Tupua asks law to recognize a river as a whole. Taranaki Maunga asks the state to acknowledge that a mountain was never simply an object waiting to be owned. Aoraki gives the answer its full height. The lesson is not that modern law has finally become poetic. The lesson is that law is being forced to expand because the older relationship was never merely poetic in the first place. It organized responsibility, it defined belonging, it survived loss, translation, conflict, and time. New Zealand is often sold through escape, empty roads, open space, mountains without crowds. Yet the deeper story is not emptiness, it is connection. Every apparently remote valley carries names. Every river enters a history. Every mountain stands within someone's memory. Even the places that appear untouched are protected by hands checking bridges, traps, instruments, boundaries, and weather reports. The land is alive in the geological sense. It moves, erupts, fractures, rises, floods, and erodes. It is alive in another sense too. People address it, descend from it, negotiate for it, care for it, and increasingly ask the law to recognize relationships that maps alone cannot show. At the beginning, the country appears to contain the world. By the end, it offers something harder to carry home. The possibility that a place is not truly known when we have measured its height, crossed its trail, or photographed its horizon. A place is known when we begin to understand the obligations that come with standing there. There are countries that make people feel larger. New Zealand does the opposite. It places a person beneath a moving mountain, beside a river older than law, inside weather that ignores plans, and among birds whose future depends on a trap checked in the rain. Small again, properly small. In the forest of Whakarewarewa, evening settles between the trees. A kiwi steps through leaf litter, pauses, and lowers its beak into the ground. Above it, the first stars appear through a break in the canopy. Nothing in the scene knows it is the ending of a journey. Perhaps that is why it works. Which part of New Zealand would you cross the world to see first? The volcanic north, the glacial south, or the living Maori landscapes that connect them? Thank you for traveling with us. Subscribe, and we will meet again on the next journey.